Well, time flies when you are having fun, and it is no different when it comes to Friday night primetime. Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to RaceSpotTV and back to the IMSA iRacing series, where the end of Season 1 is well and truly in sight. We begin the final three, and it starts right here at Road America. Fast, twisty, and punishing, it marks the venue for round 10 of the opening season in 2023. And to talk you through all of the action is myself, Zach Sweeney. Cameron Roger is back alongside me with Iku Merikala behind the scenes. And Cam, what are we expecting tonight?
I think we're expecting quite a good race. This is always a fan favourite track, and as well for the drivers, and of course a great three class of action coming your way as well. Loads of straights around here, some quite fast corners, so hopefully this should be a pretty entertaining race this evening.
It should be indeed. And as I said, we approach the end of season number 1. We're here for round 10 at Road America. In a week's time, we take to Detroit and, of course, Belle Isle. And then, of course, to round off the season on March the 3rd, we take to the Sebring International Raceway. 2 fantastic circuits. And in general, to be fair, we've had a pretty decent calendar. Very, very diverse in sort of the layouts and the styles and the sort of the attributes that you need to succeed. Honestly, this opening season's really been a banger, Cam.
Certainly has. Can't wait to see what's coming our way in Season 2 in a couple of weeks' time. But as you say, a really nice trio of races coming our way to round out Season 1 of 2023. Of course, we started it way back in December 22. It's been quite a while, but some great racing along the way. And yeah, it's just going to be a nice American triple header to finish off, because of course we've been over to Europe with the likes of Nürburgring and Magny-Cours as well during the season.
We have indeed, and well, with qualifying nearly in the books, we're just waiting for the final few to cross the line, and of course the clock to tick 0. Then we'll talk you through the grid order for today's race. But well, talking a little bit more about Road America, I mean, it really is going to punish. I think qualifying is going to be of quite decent importance. In all fairness, Cam, you've got to get your name up that field.
Yeah, we've got some pretty large fields as such. We've got sort of over 10 cars in each field, and that means if you're down in that bottom half, it's going to be very difficult to come back. Of course, 45-minute race coming our way. A pit stop will be needed with the smaller fuel tanks used in this series. So there's definitely some strategy that comes into it, but at the end of the day, you have to be fast and you have to up the front if you want to be challenging for the race win today.
You really do. I mean, in all fairness, you can still very much overtake the slipstream. It's going to be quite strong. And, of course, that run towards turn number 1, that run also towards turn number 5, the braking zone just after the second back straight. I mean, you can still definitely make those moves. And thinking actually back to a couple of seasons ago on Friday Night Primetime, I always remember Nick Thyssen sending a move around the outside of the carousel in I think it was the Brazilian stock cars or something along those lines. Moves can really, they can definitely be done. As much as track position is important, there are still vital areas you can send some moves.
Yeah, you certainly can. And when it comes to the multicast overtakes, of course, that is going to be a big factor, being the traffic management around this track. It's a very high-speed track. There's a lot of straights where, of course, overtaking the traffic is a lot easier. But there's some very, very important corners around here that you can easily get caught up with and lose some time.
For sure, absolutely. And we are going to talk you through the grid order as they rack up for 45 minutes of racing action. 3 classes, of course, the BMW M Hybrid V8, the Dallara LMP2, and, of course, the GTDs. We're going to start with the GTDs. Sven Hasse takes pole position, just over half a tenth clear of Elias Riker alongside on the front row. Then comes Norby Kiss and Andrea Bristott 3 and 4, with Pablo Oreo Castro your top 5. Yuri Kazdorp rounds off the top 6. Only just under 4 tenths covering the top 6. Very, very close indeed. Kindervata P7 with Hjelvik in 8th. Kini and Kuno Appa round off your top 10 with Bruno Fontalba and Leif Sebastian, the 6th row of the field. Very, very tight, very, very competitive. Really looking forward to seeing how these guys rack up. That's going to do it for the GTDs. We look up to the Dallara P217s, and it's Sepila that takes pole position ahead of Bilak, who will join him on the front row. Again, very, very close qualifying. The number 15 Finn P3 with Valentin Boni P2. Last time out of the Nürburgring, rounds off P4 in qualifying for today. Hilialo, your top 5 with Gunther Hawthorne, the top 6. Then comes Thomas King and Ollie Cole just in behind there with Savorkin and Maldi, your top 10th, Ferran and Buile 11th and 12th, just in behind there. And again, still proven to be very, very close with the number 34. Again, another Finnish driver, Perhoen, the top 13, the final driver of the field, of course. And now, last but not least, the big boys of the BMW M Hybrid V8. Patrick Wolf, Owen Carl, your top 2, with Collart and Alander 3 and 4, just in behind. Thomas Simon rounds off the top 5 with Nathan Olsen alongside him there on the third row of the field, just over half a second, covering the top 6. Again, incredibly close. And looking back, Eduardo Leo just in behind there with Tom Hooper keeping him for company on the fourth row of the grid. Then comes Milak and Kraus, the top 10, with Kazani and Lusani in 11th and 12th, respectively, rounding off the BMW field. Just in behind there, Dominic Hoffman, the 27 machine, 13th and last when it comes to the BMW M Hybrid V8. Well, Cam, we're just moments away from what seems to be about 26 laps of racing action around Road America. I'm going to, we're about to get on the way full formation lap. How are these guys going to use this lap to psych themselves up? I mean, we saw how close it was. Surely the pressure's got to be sky high.
Yeah, the pressure is certainly on for these drivers. But this formation lap, of course, is a place where they can just slightly calm those nerves and maybe have a little bit of a think about what they want to do with their strategy, both in terms of the pit stop strategy, but also their racecraft strategy. You see, there's a pretty big field and in each of the classes, and therefore you need to find a way of getting past the drivers ahead of you. We know the slipstream is always a good way of saving a bit of fuel and maybe using your position strategically to sit behind and have a shorter pit stop at a later point in the race. But at the same time, you need to be making the moves on track. You've always got to be looking forward and having a little bit of a look around you, see the types of drivers around you. Are they going to be ones to look out for, or are they going to be ones that you can make easy moves on?
Yeah, it is all about knowing your opponent. I mean, we have got some, pretty familiar names, the likes of Mason Mlinek, Philip Kraus, and Carroll, Patrick Wolf up there, Yuri Kasdorp in GTD, Valentin Bonney in the LMP2s. I mean, surely over, of course, the season and, of course, in other areas of sim racing, in other competitions, these guys do get a sense of familiarity with their opponents. And I guess in some senses that does play to their advantage a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly get used to seeing certain names, and you get used to maybe how they drive or how they attack a certain race. So there are some drivers who are, of course, a lot more aggressive in their strategy, in their driving style. They always want to get to the front as soon as they can, but of course that comes with risks. And sometimes, if you see them diving down the inside of you, there's probably a 50-50 chance that they're going to lock up the brakes and run wide. So you have to sort of take that into your account. And especially in a series like this where we see certain names come back week after week, you definitely know the ones to look out for who are a potential hazard in your race.
I do love how they call them a hazard. I mean, you got to be blunt sometimes, particularly as a driver. It's a case of I'm gonna stay clear of them. I'm not too fond of throwing away my race, because again in these prototypes, all it takes is the slightest bit of contact. I mean, even in the GTDs as well, even with ABS and TC and things like that, the assists. All it takes is the smallest bit of contact, and you can send your race very much haywire. It's surely got to be a case of caution overall.
Yeah, caution is always something that I think you should have as a driver, especially in an endurance race. Of course, it's only 45 minutes, but it's still an endurance style event. You want to be thinking of the longer game, and we have seen this quite a few times. The strategy is so important in these types of racing. You don't have many opportunities to get to the front, so therefore, when the opportunity does come your way, you need to be taking full advantage of that. So definitely look out for some slipstream play going along around here, especially the front straightaway, but also between turn 3 and 5 as well on that back straight. That is definitely a good place to get some slipstream and have a shorter pit stop, because sometimes sitting behind there for a few laps is generally a safer way of making an overtake.
Absolutely, and well, just before the safety car peels off to the pit lane, well, I'm gonna ask you, Cam, who's winning?
I'm gonna have a look there in that 4th place of Valtteri Alander for this one in the GTPs.
Oh, well, we are just moments away from having our questions answered. The iRacing safety car will peel off to the right-hand side. It will be Patrick Wolf and Owen Cowell, your front row in the GTPs. We are about to get underway for round 10 of Friday Night Primetime. The IMSA iRacing Series takes to Road America. They climb up the hill to start the race, and a fantastic launch from Patrick Wolf. It's now in the background, Owen Carroll and Simon Coulthard side by side as they run their way in towards turn number 1. 2 wide just in behind that as well, with Valtteri Landa and Thomas Simon just in behind. Inside line for the number 2 machine of Owen Carroll, trying to hang on. He manages to stay in second place, and again still side by side as they run their way in towards turn number 3, the very important right-hander that leads you onto this back straight through turn 4 and downhill braking for turn number 5. It seems that Patrick Wolf has got this one in the bag, and looking back to the LMP2s, very, very feisty in the background, but a fairly comfortable start for the number 3 machine of Sipala. But looking back, you can see the fight for 4th and 5th very much on as GTDs get themselves underway, and so far pretty calm starts as that fight for 3rd. Yuri Kaustop having a bit of a look there in 6th place, trying to make some moves up versus the Ferrari, but overall some fairly calm starts.
Absolutely, as Norby Kish there having a bit of a battle in turn 3 4. Oh, bit of contact. Number 12 machine goes around. That is Castro. Actually gets back to facing the right way, but definitely some contact there. Some damage will be on the rear of that car, and as the GTDs already go to battle in the first couple of corners of their race.
Well, so spoke a bit too soon, I think. The Norby Kish unfortunately getting spun around just a little bit, but trying to refocus and, well, can continue their focus towards the rest of the race. You've had that shake now. It's just a case of brushing it off and continuing on. But Sven Hasse very much controlling the front of the field. And talking about control, well, look at this in the GTPs. A complete breakaway, really, from Patrick Wolf. Only took pole by just over half a tenth ahead of Owen Carroll, but not waiting around in the opening stages of this race. Really cleared off. It almost looks to be a fight for second at this point.
Absolutely, and I wonder if there's, just with the train that's behind, I wonder if Carroll's had a few mistakes here and there, but it's not always the easiest to overtake when the cars are so close together, but Owen is going to have to really hold on there because there's a lot of drivers who'll be praying to get the opportunity to go past. But also in the LMP2s, we are seeing some spreading out already after the first lap, so definitely maybe the pole sitters and sort of the qualifying just starting to show that the top drivers have already got themselves to the front, and then they can try and pull away and get some gaps before we hit the lap traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is going to be very important. Patrick Wolf is going to be mindful of the fact that the GTDs are going to come up quick, and he has to be prepared. He wants to be in a position where he doesn't have to rush. He doesn't have to be worrying about Owen Carroll behind him. He needs to be in a position where he can chill. He can take a smooth ride through. Of course, not complacent or anything like that, but more a case of I can pick my way through. As into the pit lane comes the Ferrari that we saw spinning around on the opening lap. You can see just now coming in there. So probably sustaining a little bit of damage potentially in the opening moments of this race.
Yeah, that's Pablo Castro coming in, of course, renowned streamer. I'm sure he's streaming right now. And not the best start that he would have wanted, because that is going to be some damage repairs and already being well off the back of the field, and maybe even going a lap down if the damage repairs are that bad. So hopefully they can get back in the race and at least have some fun out there on track, because of course Road America is a fun track to drive even just on your own. But you see here in the GTD field, Sven Hasse trying to pull away, but Rijker's definitely coming with him as they're starting to pull a gap already to Norby Kish there in 3rd place.
Yeah, I definitely think Elias Rijker is going to sort of be in it for the long run with Sven Hasse. I mean, Hasse is a driver you don't really want to let get away by any stretch of the imagination, but in a sense that, well, it's better to try and be in a 1v1 than it is to invite the likes of Norby Kish and Andrea Bristott into the fight as well. So maybe if Elias Rijker is confident in the pace and is able to stay as close as possible to Sven Hasse without letting him get away, it might well be the better option, because, again, we've seen it time and time again, not just in Friday Night Primetime, but almost, you know, unanimously in sim racing motorsport, is that drivers that battle too early on look awesome for the first couple of laps, and it gives them some pretty good entertainment. But when it gets to sort of the halfway point towards the end of the race, they start to struggle, because, you know, the early battles, as you know, important as they maybe thought they were early on, getting that track position in the long run really did harm them with that time lost relative to everyone else.
Yeah, race always unfolds, and it always is different from now to when we're going to see the race. Obviously, in about 40 minutes' time, at the end, you're not going to see all these LMP2s in this exact same order that cut just a second apart between each of them. They're going to be so spread out. Things will have happened. I've seen a bit of a dive there down the inside. That's the narrowest card there of Bilet getting overtaken by Valentin Boni up the inside into turn 5. Nice, easy overtake up the inside and sliding your way through. And that's the type of efficient overtake you want to have if you want to be making some progress up the field.
Short, sharp, quick, and easy is pretty much what you're going to be hoping for. You don't want to be too caught up in battles, because you trip over each other, you bring those in behind, you allow those in front to get away. But Valentin Boni, I mean, still searching, I think, for a race victory. His teammate, of course, Adrian Leidinger, is the only repeat winner we've had this season in the LMP2, taking one in Magny-Cours and, of course, last time out at the Nürburgring. Surely for Valentin Boni, it's a case of, well, if my teammate can do it, surely I can as well. He wants a bit of the glory.
Yes, certainly getting your name on the record sheets is always a good one, especially when it comes between teammates and such. As you go back to the GTD battle as the number 11 card, this is a battle a little bit lower down. This battle is sort of 7th, 8th place in class, and the Kindervater there is holding on in that battle as it stands. A lot of Porsches here out at Road America, so obviously loving the BOP towards their favour this time around, but definitely a little bit of a gap is coming ahead, and that's a Govan Keeney up the road there in that number 5, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely a gap that needs to be closed down if they want to have any sort of battles in that top 5, top 6.
For sure, they're going to need to move forward. Here's a bit of a replay. Yuri Kazdorp on the back, heading in towards turn number 5. The number 13 machine on the inside seems fairly comfortable up till now. Is there any issues that are going to arise? At the moment, Yuri Kazdorp running in 5th place in the GTDs, and, well, trying to move forward as best as possible. And a pretty tidy move there. Again, going back to sort of neat and tidy moves, that is the types of things you want. Is just simple, easy, down the inside, get on with it. Not too hard fought from those around you, because when you're a pack that's trying to chase, that's vitally important to just work together and have that mutual agreement to say, right, yeah, you're quicker, let's go.
Absolutely, as we are coming up across the line, and we've got about 38 minutes left in this race, so 7 minutes down already, and of course the time will continue to go quickly as they do around this high-speed racetrack, and that is exactly what the drivers are going to be looking at. But we'll come back towards the GTPs, and of course the massive lead that is opening up, and that is quite surprising considering what we've seen over the course of qualifying, or just how close things can be. But when you get in a zone around a certain racetrack, you can just start going, miles faster, and really use that confidence to keep pushing forward.
For sure, it's a case of, right, awesome, I've got a lead, let's push forward. And in the opening moments, I mean, yes, there's still 37.5 minutes left of this race. Still a long way to go, and can't call the race now, but Patrick Wolff definitely doing themselves a world of favours by opening that gap up to Owen Carroll, because the train of cars behind, definitely not a fight that the race leader wants to be a part of, because, well, all it takes really is Simon Collatz to send a move on the second place man of Owen Carroll, who we follow now through turn number 5. All it takes, it's a short fuse, and all it takes is one spark to ignite a very intense well, not necessarily midfield, but that pack fight for second. And if Patrick Wolff was, close to it and involved in it, it could be disastrous for his race. So in a sense, just get away from it and, well, not be anywhere near the carnage that could very much unfold. And if it does happen, he's going to benefit even more from it by gaining time in the early stages. When it comes to traffic and when it comes to pit stops, Patrick Wolff is going to give himself sort of a big margin of leniency to use.
Yeah, and it's over 2 seconds as well, which is a large gap in this form of racing. I mean, that is a gap you can always manage at this stage. As you see, a lot of the other gaps between individual cars is tenths of a second, as we're getting a three-way battle here a little bit further back in the LMP2 category. And of course, that is sort of the positions that you don't always want to be talking about, as it's slightly lower down towards the back of the pack. There's Claudio Moldi there in the mid-pack, enjoying his time, but in 8th place at this moment.
Yeah, 8th place, I mean, still decent in all fairness. There's nothing really too bad about it. We follow the fight now for third in the GTDs between Norby Kish and Andrea Bristow just in behind. They are, well, at the moment, just a couple of seconds back off that lead fighter Sven Hasse and Elias Riker. So again, they're not a million miles away from it, but it's a case of how much does Bristow want that third place versus the chance maybe to chase after the leaders, and how confident is he in that pace? Because right now, they're sort of, I guess, mutually agreed to work together to try and catch the lead fight, right? But I guess if Bristow is like, well, I could catch them a little bit quicker, he's got to lead in that confidence, and he has to make a move and then stick with that pace and really lead the charge. So there's a lot of pressure maybe on Bristow's shoulders to try and go for that move. Surely it's maybe safer to just sit back and trust the BMW in front. I'm not entirely sure, as well, already Patrick Wolf joining the first wave of GTD traffic, and well, this is exactly what he needs. He's got a big old gap back behind that he can now use to his advantage.
I love this point of the race. First time coming through the traffic, all the GTPs still close together, but of course, all the GTDs also still close together, and they are just so much faster, diving up the inside the kink. Oh, that is a car off there. Ooh. At the kink, though. Is that Kasdorp, sorry. Yeah, going off. That's a huge, huge hit. I don't know if there was contact with the car further ahead, or slightly off the screen, but definitely a massive spin. Big damage coming the way of Kasdorp.
Yeah. Definitely not ideal for Yuri Kasdorp, and well, that is surely going to spell an end to his chances in this race. I mean, again, it just shows how easily things can happen, but Yuri Kasdorp looking good, escaping back to the pit lane, so surely got to be a DNF, I think. I mean, there's no realistic chance that he's going to be able to fight back, and just look at this carnage of how close it was from second downwards in the GTPs. As soon as any traffic gets involved, all things start to kick off. Simon Korlach trying to work his way forward. Valtteri Lander trying to move up into third place now. It's just so overwhelming, and surely you just wouldn't want to be a driver in that situation. There's so much going on and so many things that can go wrong.
Yeah, there's one driver. Was there Korlach that we're on board with now? One of the drivers really lost out in turn one there, got stuck on the outside behind the GTD, and about 3 GTPs just dived up the inside. Once you see a gap, you just absolutely send it as a racing driver of any level, and up the inside there comes back. One of the drivers a little bit further back is out to Leo there, diving up the inside of Hooper, I believe that was, in towards turn 5. Bit opportunistic there, but when the cars are so close together, actually comes back though. Leo loses that place back, and that is a nice little fight there. Hooper gets back up into P6 because they know just how important these are, but certainly just showing how the traffic can really open up these battles.
I'm absolutely loving this. There is so much going on, and again, as I said, it did not take much to ignite a very, very intense fight. Valtteri Lander now up to third place. Nathan Olsen just in behind him by a couple of tenths. Then comes Tomas Simon, Tom Hooper, Eduardo Leo, Simon Korlach, who really did got the worst end of this. We're going to take another look as to what happened with Yuri Kasdorp, and well, just how easy can it happen, Cam?
Yeah, let's have a look. Is there going to be a GTP dive up the inside there? One of the BMW livery cars. Oh, yes, there was contact there. That is not a nice experience for Kasdorp. He definitely left room up the inside. Didn't quite see which BMW it was, unfortunately, with it being the default car, but definitely some contact being made, and that is a very disappointing situation because, of course, as the faster category, you've got to be looking out for the GTDs at corners like that where they're already committed and on the limit.
Yeah, I mean, as a prototype, it is your job to lap safely, lap responsibly, and I guess in that sense, with the prototypes, the GTPs, it's, well, I've got 6 cars queuing up behind me. I have to go for that move. It's sort of that desperation that starts to kick in, and unfortunately for Yuri Kasdorp, through such a quick corner, you're already on, as you say, the absolute limit of what the car can handle. So there's not really much margin for Yuri to just dart out the way, and well, it was just a recipe for disaster. But looking forward, we've just got over half an hour left of this race, and a very decent fight for third starting to materialize. Owen Carroll able actually to have a bit of pressure alleviated off his shoulders through that sort of traffic sequence. Of course, Owen Carroll very used to sort of an endurance multi-class experience format sort of thing. So Aaron Carroll, I think, using that experience to best dart his way through traffic and give him those crucial couple of seconds to break away from a very, very tight pack behind.
Yeah, it's always good when you can get that extra second here or there. Just takes the pressure off you a little bit. Of course, a tiny bit of luck comes into it as well with where you meet the traffic. But of course, sometimes if you were that little bit faster, then maybe you would have got the traffic at a different time or a different place on the track. As you jump to the GTD battles, Sven Haase there starting to pull away at the front. Riker was staying with him in those first opening few laps. So on the last lap, Riker was actually a second slower than Haase, so starting to lose some time and come into the clutches of Norby Kish, who's still there in that third place and really overall, I think, catching up a little bit towards the front.
Yeah, bringing Andrea Bristow into the mix as well, who's only about a couple of car lengths in behind that Porsche. You can see following the BMW, there is the number 6 machine, so very much a chasing pack, trying to get onto that fight for second. But Sven Haase, I mean, Elias Riker has got the pace, raw pace, but I think that Sven Haase was able to produce that pace lap after lap after lap, and Riker maybe deep here, a bit too late on the throttle here, small things like that that can really start to add up, and that's what Sven Haase can use to just slowly, bit by bit, bridge away that gap to now what is 1.5 seconds. So Elias Riker, what seemed to be looking forward and maybe trying to put some pressure on Sven Haase, is now potentially looking backwards and trying to anchor onto second.
Let's see what their lap times are as they come across the line. Is there going to be any sort of a difference? No, Riker was a lot quicker that lap, actually. Was only 1/10 slower than Haase. So I think the lap before, there must have been a mistake somewhere being that 1 second slower. But the lap that they've just done, Riker was pretty much on the pace within thousandths of Kish and Haase. So definitely showing that Riker still has the pace. But it is that consistency, of course, that you need to factor in as we're getting Sivorkin there coming into the pit lane already with half an hour to go. Definitely one of the earlier pit stops. If this is on strategy, it's definitely the alternate strategy that we did see work a little bit at VRR a couple of weeks ago.
It is, but as you say, you run at a heavier fuel load for longer in this race, so maybe trying to do it to get some clear air, get out of the rear wing of someone in front of you, whatever it is. But I mean, we've seen a multitude of different strategies work throughout the season. I think it very much is circumstantial depending on the circuit. I mean, because we've had people go as late as sort of 15 minutes left to go, some people as early as we see now with 30 minutes left to go. Very much a wide range of pit window strategy that can and does work. So we'll have to see what Sivorkin can do as the race progresses. But I think the majority of people are actually stretching this stint out a little bit longer, because usually if the best strategy is an early pit stop, we see quite a few people come in the early stages.
Yeah, so you have to think about the race really in thirds as such. So 45-minute race. Tank can last roughly half an hour, so then you have an extra 15 minutes or half a tank you've got to do somewhere. It's either you start the race with 30 minutes of fuel, and then you go all the way to 0, and then you fill up with 15 minutes and then go to the end of the race. Or you start with 30, but then you only use 15, so then when you stop, you also only have to take 15 minutes of fuel, so the same amount of stoppage time, but then, of course, you can go to the end of the race. However, your average fuel load in the car is, of course, higher because you have 2 stints where you start with a full tank as such. So definitely slightly slower potentially, but you are, of course, going to get yourself in a different place on track and maybe have some different traffic that you can work around as we're getting LMP2s try and work their way through these GTDs into turn 1.
Yeah, and while hitting a big wave of GTD traffic, a quite close fight actually in behind. We're following at the moment Yuri Leitonen, but just in behind that is Jesse Hilhalo, Valentin Boni trying to move his way up onto the podium, and well, very, very close. We've got 3 cars all next to each other, back to back to back. Valentin Boni just in behind with Thomas King rounding off the top 5. Valentin Boni maybe having a bit of a look in towards turn number 5. Is he letting off on the brakes? Actually more going defensive versus Thomas King. Bit of GTD traffic to work with. There goes King around the outside of the undercut sim racing driver, now up the hill towards turn number 6. Thomas King is going to try and hang the move all the way around the outside, use the GTD traffic to box in Valentin Boni, but still having a bit of a look, and well, side by side as they run their way through the next right-hander. That was a very opportunistic but very brave and very well executed move, and well, it's still very much not done as they enter their way through, squeezing their way past the Porsche, still side by side. Valentin Boni giving him the squeeze all the way to the outer extremities of the circuit, now side by side through the carousel, outside line for Valentin Boni, bit of traffic to work their way through as well there, arging and barging past the BMW, but wow, oh my, how have they stayed as they were after all of that? That was very well respectful driving, but well, very, very close to the limit.
What an absolutely immense battle that was. And actually, we're going to see a continue up a little bit further on. Bonnie now trying to get out the inside, or around the outside, I should say, of Hilalo into third place as well. What a lap that was for Bonnie. Side by side, still whilst diving it down the inside of some GTD cars as well. Definitely pushing it to the limit of what is physically possible by getting 3 cars through a corner. But somehow they're all still driving around this track as this battle for P6 as well. Pihonen, who started at the back, is actually getting overtaken there to P8. My bad, but he still had a good race to get up so far to where he is.
Yeah, Gauthier Thornton maybe able to make the move, but the counter-attack well and truly is on now. Outside line, look at the slingshot, actually able now to just catapult themselves back ahead in towards turn number 1, but the fight is still on, side by side as they run their way through. Oh my word, a little bit of contact. Off goes both of them. There goes Pironen off into the gravel traps of turn number 1, and well, that just goes to show how crucial overtakes can be when you're working your way through traffic. Fortunately able to rejoin the circuit in at least a decent manner, not causing too much upset for the chasing GTDs. This fight's still carrying on, maybe even 3 wide in towards turn number 5. There goes Valentin Bonney to the inside, trying to get himself up in towards P3. Jesse Hilalo maybe caught with his pants around his ankles, because here comes Thomas King now inside line, uphill towards turn number 6. Should be a fairly easy affair, and Hilalo from 3rd to 5th in the span of just 2 corners.
Wow, what a battle we have here for the final podium place, and what a lap Bonnie has had. At one point looking to be down in sort of 5th, 6th place, but up into 3rd, just showing you how racecraft and a bit of aggression can be so important, even in an endurance style race. You've definitely got to take the opportunities and show a bit of passion for your racing, and Bonnie doing a good job, but they are so far off the lead, 12 seconds off the lead, 6.5 to the next car of Leitinen as well. So definitely some great battles, but losing pace with the leaders as they go on.
Yeah, Valentin Bonney, of course, starting this race in 4th. All that hard work. I mean, Bonney has looked to be mightily quick, but unfortunately, I think maybe not having the best of starts, having to regain some of that ground. Now able to have a net gain compared to his qualifying position. But P3 for the charge that Valentin Bonney has been on so far in this race, I don't think is going to be good enough for the number 16 machine. He wants more, and he's going to try his absolute best to try and close that gap. But 13 seconds in 23 minutes. I mean, with no major advantage, that's surely going to be very difficult. And, well, with the pressure still well and truly on from Thomas King and Jesse Hilalo just in behind, I think Valentin Bonney might need to come back down and maybe just anchor down for 3rd, because P3 is still a very good result, improvement on his qualifying position, as I said. But unfortunately, maybe if he got off to a better start, could have pressed on for the front fight, but now it's just a case of anchoring down for P3 as we see some of the GT cars now coming in, the couple of BMWs heading their way down the pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely some strategy coming into it as we get towards the halfway point in this race of the 45 minutes around Road America this evening. Sven Haase there on screen, definitely pulling away. Riker now 3 seconds back. You can just see coming over the brow of the hill in towards the downhill braking zone. Nobikish and Bristow still coming with, but not challenging as of yet. But it's good to see that the podium still has 4 cars trying to squeeze into those 3 places that are available. And they've also dropped Keeney as well by another 3 seconds. So really just turning into that three-way battle for 2nd place. But Kish there just running it a little bit wide through sort of turn 7. And definitely not what you want to be doing too many times, but definitely in a good place. As we had a spin here in the GTPs.
Dominic Hoffman having a spin. This is at turn number 5, and well, under pressure from one of the LMP2s, but nothing too major. That's Valentin Bonney, I believe, or someone or other. But Dominic Hoffman, regardless of who's now overtaken him, has dropped down and started last in this race, and has only been able to move up 1 place. And we're going to take another look as to how it happened in towards turn number 5, presumably in a fight with a fellow BMW. Inside line for turn 5. Is it just too late on the brakes, too hard on the brakes? Maybe is that the case? Just locking up the rears?
Yeah, I think obviously pitching the car towards the left and then the rear coming round to the right. I think just putting a little bit too much lateral movement, unsettling the car a little bit too much, and maybe just catching the brakes a little bit too hard as well, trying to make that overtake. So Dominic now trying to make some time back up, but 21 seconds behind the leader. Not going to be getting towards the top positions today, but did start from the back of the pack, of course, and trying to find some battles, but that is 5.5 seconds to the next car.
Into the pit lane then comes our two race leaders, and into the pit lane actually comes Dominic Hoffman as well from P12, but Sven Haas and Elias Riker both into the pit lane. I think actually the majority of our race leaders in the GTDs now heading their way down the pit lane as we just tick past the halfway mark of this race. 21 minutes left to go, and very much is kicking off in terms of the pit lane sequence. And I guess this is really where we start to see who's done a very, very good stint one as to who emerges in front in such a close fight in the GTDs. It's a case of just saving those fractions of a second in the pit stop that can really make the difference.
Yeah, as you say, fractions of a second is important, because if you're right behind a car and then you have even half a second quicker pit stop, that might be enough just to nose ahead as you come out the pit lane, and that could be all important for where you come out. If there's cars coming out towards turn one, maybe they filter in between you, something like that. That could really change the course of a battle. So definitely, as you say, make sure you nail your strategy, because sometimes even saving half a lap of fuel, even if you don't use it, can help you, because it's more fuel in the tank, which means the number that you need to make when you're on pit exit to get to the end of the race, of course you've already have some of that in the tank, and therefore it's basically just a little bit of free fuel. So all those little micro management things are going to be what gets you out on top in this race, as we're coming back to the battles in the LMP2 field, and of course some nice battles as we've seen here for the podium battles.
Absolutely. Thomas King now leads the way in that fight for third, just ahead of Jesse Hill-Harlow and Valentin Bonnier, actually falling back. So at one point was up to third, now down to fifth once more. So still very, very close, and still having a look to the inside. Potentially was the number 19 machine of Hill-Harlow, but and towards turn number 6 once more. It is just a case of waiting, I think, maybe for the prime opportunity to pounce. When you're in the 19th position of, looking forwards and backwards, you've got to, I don't know, how would you approach that sort of position? I mean, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You're trying to attack, you're trying to defend. Is it a case of waiting for an opportunity, or are you sort of forced to find a gap because of that pressure from behind?
It's definitely a position where you'd want to be a little bit more aggressive. Of course, it can be a little bit frustrating if the car ahead of you is maybe going a couple of tenths of laps slower than what you feel like. But of course, I think the strategy factor could be the big factor, because in this case, there's not a huge amount of pressure from the car behind of Valentin Bonnier there in that third place in this battle as it stands. So you can definitely sit behind if you're Hilalo there. Just sit behind and just be comfortable. As long as King is setting some good consistent laps, you can definitely just sit there and play the slightly longer game. There's no need to rush it at this stage.
Into the pit lane then comes Valentin Bonnier and our two Dallara P217 leaders of Sapila and Leighton. From first and second, Thomas King stays out. So too does Jesse Hill-Harlow for yet an extra lap. So bit of a difference in terms of strategy in that fight for third. Valentin Bonnier maybe just trying to have a bit of a shorter pit stop, get some clear air, push a little bit harder, because he's probably betting on the fact that Hill-Harlow is going to try and put on a bit of pressure versus Thomas King and use that to better his drive and maybe get the jump on the pair of them, as the majority of our leaders in the BMWs now win, as we see Patrick Wolf heading his way down the pit lane too.
Yeah, Wolf, Carl, Alander, Olsen all in pit road as it stands as we come towards this battle. King there still holding on as this turns into the lead battle in the LMP2s as it stands, and Hilalo there just doing a good job to sit behind, but don't know if you notice as that was flashing the headlights quite dramatically down the front straightaway, so definitely looking to make a move if the door opens up.
I mean, you've got to. We saw it with the BMWs a little bit earlier on. Was it with Simon Collatz, where he was just beached on the outside, and everyone behind was like, Cool, sweet, gap, I'm going for it, awesome. Actually, up an extra couple of places for them, and was able to capitalize on that. So as soon as you do see a gap in a fight as close as this, where opportunities may be few and far between, you have to pounce on whatever comes your way, particularly when we're closing into, as you say, the final stage of the 3 stages of this race. We've done the beginning, we're now towards the end of the middle, and now it's the beginning of the end for these guys. So time really not on their side, as still this fight for third raging on, as Andrea Bristow is still on the back of that BMW just in front, as the GTD pit stops start to funnel their way out, and Bristow has, well, been looking at the rear end of that BMW for quite some time in this race.
Always again is Patrick Wolf there, obviously down into 8th place with how the pit stops have worked out. Still ahead of Carl, though, but only just. That is the car right in behind. So that lead that we saw opening up in the early stages of the race, that has gone. And we now need to see what Wolf and Carl can do for this overall win, effectively, because once all the pit stops work out, we believe these two should come back out in the lead with how everything is working out. And Carl is really starting to push now, starting to see the opportunity to get himself in the net race lead.
Potentially so. It's opportunities like these that you really do have to use. It's as close as Owen Carroll has been for the entirety of this race, and all it takes is some slipstream or maybe a bit of traffic to get in the way to really fabricate that move. But as soon as, I mean, Patrick Wolf has been on fire since the start of this race, was able to break away sort of 2.5, 3 seconds in the early stages, and has, at no point really been under pressure until now. So it's a case of Owen Carroll. It's like, well, what if he breaks away again? I need to use this as my time to shine, to get into the lead, because surely it's quite fairly easy to defend around Road America if you cover your bases, if you're quick in the right places. If Owen Carroll can get ahead, he could have a fair shot at actually staying ahead of what could be the previous race leader of Patrick Wolf.
Yeah, even if you obviously take into account the slipstream around here, if you can get good exits out of the final corner, out of turn 3, for instance, and get a good run through the carousel and the kink, it is going to be very hard to get that momentum. Also, with judging the traffic pretty well, of course, included in that. So yeah, as you say, it's certainly possible to do so, but yeah, Carl needs to, or Carol, I should say, needs to basically at least put some pressure on. Try and make Patrick Wolf at least look in the mirrors every now and again, maybe miss the odd apex here and there, maybe take a little bit too much risk in traffic. That is really the position that he's in at this moment in time.
And still this fight for second. It's Elias Riker versus Andrea Bristow. I think Norby Kish just in behind, about 1.7 seconds back in their BMW. So I think actually was able to jump the number 17 machine was Bristow after previously being stuck behind him for the majority of the opening stint. Now able to maybe put some pressure on for second place. Very, very close on the run downhill towards turn number 5. Having a bit of a look and maybe late on the brakes actually from Andrea Bristow up the inside. Fairly easy affair. Not too hard fought from the number 4 BMW. Well, I mean, was that a case of maybe saying, I mean, we've got Norby Kish in behind, I don't really want to lose the podium? Or was it a case of, well, you were just that much late on the brakes, there was no point fighting that? Either way, Bristow, decisive, bold, and confident on the brakes, and that's exactly what you need to make a move.
And it really works well with the GTP there, just gaining an extra 10th or so in that battle. So perfect timing, as you say, for that overtake, and really the perfect situation. No defense at all, and I do think Riker there, as you say, just maybe thinking about the fact that Norby Kish is only sort of another second or so behind. You just see there in the background coming out of the carousel, so you don't want to be fighting too hard because you'll easily lose that 1 second gap or so, and before you know it, you're having a 3-way battle instead of 2-way battle. Total of 2-way battles. Here we see Maciej Mlinek coming out of turn 3 there, 10th place as it stands in that number 14 machine, and maybe not the place that Mlinek would want to be in this category, of course, but that is Kazani in just behind.
Fight for the top 10, of course, and while granted it is only a 12-car field for the BMWs, it's nice to at least have some sort of substantial milestone to be reached. A little bit further up, actually, a fight now for P7. Simon Clark's under pressure from Tom Hooper just in behind as they run their way through into the next left-hander. Not quite close enough is the 18 machine of Hooper, but the carousel up next and a bit of GT traffic just in front as well. Surely Hooper's going to be looking ahead and thinking, how can I use this to find a way through? Because the pressure is certainly well and truly on, substantially fermented in the slipstream. It's just a case of finding that gap and committing to filling it.
Yeah, you can't hesitate around these parts, especially with how high speed it is. Any sort of little mistake, and it's really going to, come back to bite you. Especially in some of these corners, you've got to be committed and got to be making that decision sort of half a second to a second before you actually get to it. Because once you're already in the corner, once you're in that space, you can't really do too much about it. But it's good to see that the battles are continuing on even a bit lower down in the field, even as we get towards 10 minutes to go in this 45-minute race. It's certainly nice to see the battles continue on and they don't just keep on spreading out over the course of the race.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a fairly action-packed race, in all fairness. At the moment, Valtteri Landa trying to bridge away from Nathan Olsen just in behind. He's about 8 cents back, so trying to use the traffic to best sort of advantage him in that fight for the podium. But it's still, after all that, Patrick Wolff that leads the BMW M Hybrid V8s, Matti Sapila that leads the LMP2s, and Sven Haase that leads the GTDs. That's pretty much how it's been since the start of this race, while they've been a little bit under pressure, particularly in the cases of the BMWs and the GTDs also. I mean, it still, seems on paper, I guess, a fairly boring race in the fights for the race lead, but that really hasn't been the case at all, particularly as we close into the final 10, with Owen Carroll breathing down the neck of Patrick Wolff and just got to clear that LMP2, then once again got clear sight of the number 9 machine. It could definitely still be anyone's game in that fight for first.
Absolutely, and that's the fascinating part of watching live racing as well, because you don't know what's going to happen in the middle. Even if the start and the end are similar, that doesn't mean it was a straight line. We've gone all over the place, had so many different battles so far, and some different hit strategies as well. But as it stands in this GTP battle on your screens, Patrick Wolff, the number 9, is starting to get the hang of this stint, and over a second now to Owen Carroll there in second place. So definitely showing the dominance that we saw in that opening sort of 15-20 minutes of the race.
Yeah, and into the final 10, of course, trying to get as far away from that number 2 machine as possible, really, because Owen Carroll maybe... I mean, what seemed to be the case in the opening portions of this race was that Owen Carroll didn't quite have the pace to match Wolff. And maybe with the slipstream coming into a factor was the save and grace that Carroll needed to stay in that fight for the lead. So if Patrick Wolff can gain that gap to a little over a second and continue to grow it, it might sort of diminish the advantage that Owen Carroll gets from the slipstream and maybe allow him to slowly, bit by bit, once again rebuild that gap that he once had in the opening stages of this race. But it's not being helped at all, because somehow Owen Carroll is really stepping up in this second stint, finding a little bit more in terms of pace. Of course, Patrick Wolff stuck behind a bit of traffic, but again, that is the nature of the beast. That is how these races run. And Owen Carroll, maybe it's the sniff of victory that has sort of reignited some confidence and maybe found him a couple of extra tenths in this race.
Yeah, maybe. The traffic is always a weird one, though, because it really depends where you meet the traffic. And as we mentioned earlier, there is a little bit of luck in that. But of course, if you are just simply slower, the place that you would have met the car on track is obviously a bit different, because if you're faster, you would effectively meet them earlier and that sort of thing. So sometimes it's not always lucky as such for the top guys. It just so happens to be that they manage it correctly as well. So getting all 3 wide there between the 3 classes, coming towards Canada corner there. We've got Eduardo Leo trying to make a move around the outside. Not always the easiest place to do so. Sitting there in that 6th place as it stands. That'll be Thomas Simon right ahead in the number 7 machine. A good battle here as we get towards the final corner.
Yeah, of course, now through the right, and Eduardo Lea is going to have the slipstream up the pit straight and towards turn number 1. Of course, winner a while ago when we went to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was Eduardo Lea in this BMW, so he knows what it's like to fight at the front, he knows what it's like to overtake, he knows what it's like to win, but at the moment fighting for 5th. Very, very close to Thomas Simon, just in front and caught up actually behind a bit of traffic, potentially could spark the fight that he needs. Maybe inside line for turn number 3, he's going to have a bit of a look and maybe trying to go for the move on the LMP2 as well, but inside line for Leo, able to get that move done, but has to get the foot to the floor because, well, it's very easy for Simone to maybe have another look with the slipstream towards turn number 5 and go in defensive, clearing the LMP2s. It seems that Leo's in the clear, but we're not too sure until they start braking.
And defending down the inside there and towards turn number 5, Leo's got that inside line, defends that nice. And did you notice how that, or actually as we do maybe come back up towards the hill, but if you notice, it was all about that LMP2 placement in turn 1. The LMP2 defended to the inside, made that jolt to say, no, you are not diving down the inside. And that was enough for Simon to back out of it. And of course, Leo comes in full speed, managed to get the run through turn 2 into 3. But that all started because of that LMP2 doing that, as we're seeing here, the number 32 machine of Lucani there having a bit of a spin at turn 3. That's quite far off, though. I wonder if there was a bit of contact there, maybe.
Potentially maybe need to take another look, because yeah, it's not often that you see well, we're getting told that it potentially could be a bit of hardware failure, which, as unfortunate as it is, would definitely be a pretty understandable and justifiable reason for going off. But in towards turn number 3, we're gonna have a bit of a look, and just, well, it seems to lock the rears, a bit of a snap, so definitely not hardware, just a small error twitching it. And once it snaps, once you're onto that grass, you just are a passenger.
It's crazy, the margins that we talk about. They're just, as you say, just lock in the rears slightly. We saw it with, was it Hoffman as well into turn 5. Just all these little things, and there's just no place to correct. The track, especially an old school track like Road America, narrow track, no tarmac runoffs. So if you make the slightest mistake, you just can't save it. And it's incredible, actually, just how consistent you have to be, even just to get around the track. Of course, we always take it for granted, the skill of lots of these top level drivers and how they can just easily do lap after lap without really thinking about it. But when you just start racing yourself, if you're coming from absolute scratch, you can just see why it's so difficult to complete laps sometimes. These cars really are on the edge.
We don't joke when we're like, yeah, no, it's very, very difficult. The margins for error are so slim, and while these guys are very, very good at what they do. I mean, just looking at the field, Owen Carroll 9k, Patrick Wolf 7.8k. These are, very, very good drivers competing at the top end of esports, and even they are making the smallest of errors, and it literally is the smallest of errors. Just maybe 10% too much brake pressure, maybe just a slight bit of steering angle going into the corner while you're on the brakes that just unsettles these cars. And, well, prototypes especially. I mean, the GTDs maybe not so much with their, slightly more stable handling, but definitely the prototypes, such a fine margin for error that, again, it doesn't take much at all to overstep the mark. As we catch up with Sven Haase, who is, well, clear away from the rest of the field, head and shoulders above the rest, 4.6 seconds clear of Andrea Bristow. And, well, we thought at some point Elias Riker could at least have a look at the race lead, but consistency proves to win overall in terms of this race. Sven Haase, from, with only 4.5 minutes left to go, don't want to call it too early just yet, but doing himself a lot of favours just by keeping his nose clean, staying out of trouble and staying quick throughout this race.
And I think traffic management has definitely been a thing. Of course, it's not quite so important for the GTDs, but sometimes it is about your body language and that sort of stuff. But the pace, Haase was slower than Bristow on that last lap. Was it the same? Yep. Again, this time around, another half a second for Bristow in that second place. So whilst there is a gap, is there? Haase is actually slower at this point. It has been for a couple of laps. So I definitely think maybe there is some management coming into that with Haase, just knowing where to be efficient, where to maybe allow a car through to not lose more time than you need, that sort of thing, potentially, because we've definitely seen that there's pace in this GTD field behind, but unfortunately they're just not able to show it. In fact, even Norby Kish there in 4th place was faster than Haase on the previous lap. So yeah, just showing you that the consistency and the driving, the racecraft strategic factor always comes into it. It's not just about your fastest laps of the race.
It really isn't, and it definitely does not come down to qualifying at all. I mean, Sven Haase really just sort of tears that out of the, tears it and rips it up and throws it away, really, because he's just been on fire. He put a stellar lap in qualifying and has continued that pace throughout the race. But again, it is just, yes, you can be quick. You can maybe be 0.4 of a second overall in the fastest lap of your class, but it's about having that pace lap after lap after lap, that consistency, that drive, that confidence, and just being able to hold your head up throughout the race no matter what goes your way. I'm sure Sven Haase, it's not been an easy ride for sure from his point of view. Maybe had some scary moments with some lap traffic, maybe had a sketchy moment and a bit of a mistake, but it's definitely not been plain sailing, but has still been able to make it seem, from face value, that it's not. he's not had too hard of a time, and that's very, very important. Now 5 seconds clear. We catch up with the fight for the podium now between Thomas King as he's trying to move his way up ahead of Hilalo for that podium place in the LMP2s. Well, we did see Valentin Boni in this fight not too long ago, but unfortunately he's fallen down to what is P6. So turning itself into a 2-horse race in this fight for the podium in the LMP2s.
I didn't see what happened with Bonnie, but definitely sort of 3-4 seconds behind where they should have been before. We've got Marcin Bilak just behind in that sort of turquoise Netrex livery a little bit further back, and then even further behind is Body as well. So definitely some time was lost there. We saw, of course, Hilalo losing all those places at one point and then now gaining them back but into that third place. It's yeah, pretty crazy how things can change around in sort of 10-15 minutes in a race. But it certainly does. Maybe a pit stop times coming into that as well, because I remember Bonnie did hit a lap before everyone, so maybe there was a little bit of extra time lost due to that.
Potentially so, but what's happened, and we still have a very interesting fight right in front of us. Also, talking of this fight, Bilak just in behind. Marcin Bilak is only about 1.2 seconds back off this fight for third as we approach the final lap of this race. Of course, time definitely not on the 28th machine's side, but a slither of hope potentially if things kick off just in front.
Absolutely, and there's a gap that can be overcome fairly quickly as we're into the final minutes of the race already, as we're seeing Patrick Wolf there. So this will be the final lap, actually, just coming towards turn 1 there. Of course, as soon as the clock hits 0, the next time the leader crosses the line is the finish of the race, and of course that is the top class leader, of course, and then everyone following behind will be batting. As we're seeing a final lap battle now with Thomas Seaman there coming towards the inside, having a look up towards Eduardo Leo.
Don't forget of Tom Hooper just in behind this fight as well. 3-way for 5th place. Defensive goes Leo now down the back straight towards turn number 5. And you can see Thomas Simon pulling out to the left-hand side of the shot, the right-hand side of the circuit. Outside line as they head their way onto the brakes for the final time through turn number 5. No way through this time by Leo, able to hold his bases. And now actually under pressure from Tom Hooper is Simon. So very, very tight. Very, very decisive as we come on to the final sort of half, maybe third of this lap. It's nothing separating them at all, and it could go anyone's way. But we turn our attention maybe to Patrick Wolf, as he's just been on fire since the start of this race.
Yeah, nice three-way battle to finish off the race, but it has been 45 minutes of great action. But as it comes to the end, the pole position driver is going to be winning the race. But that doesn't mean to say it's been a boring race at all. But Wolf has just had so much control in this GTP field.
He really has, and honestly, for that first stint, no pressure on his shoulders at all. Maybe a bit of an inkling, maybe of doubt when Owen Carroll caught up after the pit stop phase, but since then, Patrick Wolf has been on fire from lights to flag, from pole to victory here at Road America. Round 10 of the IMSA iRacing Series Friday night primetime goes the way of the number 9 machine of Patrick Wolf, who sees the checkered flag first and takes the win here today. A little bit further back, we're going to see the run to the line. Thomas Simon trying to hang on. Eduardo Leo takes 5th, but the run to the line, Tom Hooper ducking and diving, trying to find the way across. Photo finish as they cross side by side. Who's going to take 6th? We don't quite know. I think it is going to go the way of Simon in a very, very tight midfield fight for 6th. Waiting for, of course, our class leader. There is the LMP2 leader, the number 3 machine of Sapila, who again, very, very dominant in the LMP2s, was able to hang on and, well, just dominate that field. Same too as Sven Haase, 5.2 seconds clear of Bristow. 3 very, very deserved winners here, Cam.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that even though we had such close fights, we have got slightly more dominant victories, just showing how one driver can pull away every now and again. It was 16 seconds in the LMP2 there for Sipila winning the race, and it looks like it's going to be about 5 seconds here for Sven Haase coming up over the massive hill here at Road America to, as you say, take victory. And Bristow will be getting that 2nd place after that move on Riker earlier on in the race. Riker not defending it and just showing you why, because he has dropped off there for that 3rd place. But once again, a great battle in GTD today. So yeah, good to see how these battles continue on over the course of a 45-minute race and can give us some good action.
25 laps of racing action here today, and from pole to flag, and the fastest lap as well for Patrick Wolff sees him take victory here at Road America. Owen Carroll and Valtteri Lander complete the podium, with Nathan Olsen and Eduardo Leo just in behind that, completing the top 5. Very, very close in that fight for fifth, but in the end, it actually was a fight for 6th. Thomas Simone and Tom Hooper 6th and 7th, with Simon Clartz in 8th. Philip Kraus only 9th, with Linek only 10th, rounding off the top 10 of the field. Only a couple more behind that, 11th and 12th, Joshua Kazani, Andrea Lusani, and Dominic Hoffman unable to see the checkered flag. A very woeful race, unfortunately, for the number 13 machine. There goes the LMP2s. Actually, the number 3 machine of Matthias Siepler was able just to dominate, 16.8 seconds clear of Leitonen and Jesse Hilalo, who complete the podium. Thomas King, Marcin Bilak, your top 5, with Valentin Boni, what could have been in this race for the number 16, only 6th. Ollie Cole, P7, with Gunther Thornton, P8. Dan Ferrin and Andre Zavorkin rounds off the top 10, and just in behind that there is Proen Boiler and Claudio Maldi, the top 13 and the only 13 in this race, rounding off what was a very, very tight and very, very competitive LMP2s. Now to the GTDs. Sven Haas of 5.3 seconds clear of Andrea Bristow, and Elias Riker from 2nd to 3rd for the Finnish driver. Was a race that definitely could have been better, but definitely could have been worse. Norby Kirsch and Kindervati, your top 5, with Govan Kini P6, Von Tabler in P7, with Kuhn Appia in P8. Leif Sebastian Helvik, your top 10 in the GTDs. And, well, Yuri Kansdorp and Pablo Arroyo Castro, very, very poor races for those two. Arguably, maybe not even their fault. Just a couple of misfortunate events ending their chances in this race. Yuri Kansdorp, of course, going the way of, well, we'll put it down to traffic and, well, just proving how difficult multi-class racing can be, Cam. But that was a really, really good race.
It certainly was. And talking of difficult multi-class racing, we go to Belle Isle, and that is basically a street track, and with bumpy concrete and walls very close indeed. So that is going to take a lot of skill from these drivers for the Detroit Grand Prix. So that's going to be a really great race. So join us next week for that one, because that's certainly going to be a chaotic race.
It is indeed. Well, for myself, Zach Sweeney, Cameron Roger alongside me in the commentary booth, we've had Iko Mary Carla behind the scenes trying to keep up with all the action here today at Road America. Catch us again in a week's time, February 24th, 2045 GMT. For those of you in the UK, translate that to whatever time zone you are around the world. You are not going to want to miss the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle. But until then, take care and a very warm goodbye.